What's up, and welcome back to Hearing Voices, the voices from the Mausoleum corner of the Service Channel. We are back with another top 5 list. I am joined this time by my co-host for Cursed Beings over on my channel, Albert from Blood and Bruise.
How's it going, guys?
Albert and I have been doing content together for quite a bit now. It feels like, yeah, we're getting up there, I think. How long we've known each other.
In a minute.
But yeah, so our top list for this episode is going to be top 5 werewolves. If you've ever been to my channel, you know that's a big thing for me, and it's also a very big thing for Albert, which is why we do Cursed Beings together, because it's something that we both feel very strongly about. So obviously, when I sat down and I was like, all these things that I could do top list for, werewolves have to be one of them, and the obvious choice was you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for making time to talk about them. The other thing that I should have foreseen is that we do have some overlap, but that's not a huge deal. It doesn't matter. We're still very passionate about them, whether we have the same ones or not. So I am going to let you kick us off with your number 5 for your top werewolf picks.
So my number 5 is going to be Wolfman from 2010. I mean, for me, this film is just amazing. I mean, it's got great acting, great cinematography. It's got the score, which is freaking beautiful to me. I mean, I just, there's nothing I really can complain about this film, except for maybe, just maybe, the CGI. But even that, I feel like is done really well. So,
yeah. And in most cases, the CGI was mixed. It was mixed with practical almost the whole film. Now, don't get me wrong. There's definitely some very clear scenes where it is just that, right? But I think that, it's mostly mixed throughout the other parts of it. So Wolfman 2010 is my number 1. It is my go-to werewolf movie. And I know that, I know this is super controversial to say, right? But I actually think that Wolfman 2010 is a better film than the original. I think that it captured the emotional stuff better. I mean, this cast alone, Albert, Jesus Christ. It's got Hugo Weaving, Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, Emily Blunt. This is a stacked cast. It's got some humor in it. It's got romance. It's got all the things that you're looking for, I think, in a Wolfman story. And it's just told in a more modern effects way, but still obviously in the same timeline as the original. But yeah, so good. And I'm just Anthony Hopkins as Jesus, this is, I love him in everything I've ever seen him in. I don't have a single complaint about that man's acting, but this character that he plays as Lawrence's dad and as essentially our main villain, right, is it's just so good, and it's so scary to me, and he does such a good job, and he has these lines of things that he says, and you're just it's so good. So I agree with absolutely everything you said. I think this is a perfect movie. I have absolutely no complaints, even the CGI stuff. It's one of my favorite movies. I actually just rewatched it not even that long ago. It's I'm constantly rewatching it constantly.
It's an easy rewatch for sure.
Yeah, because it's super entertaining. Do you know which version of it have you seen? Have you seen both versions?
I want to say I saw this in the theater, and then I also own a copy of it, and I have the unrated version of it. So the one that's got the extra stuff or scenes that were cut out for theatrical.
Yeah, so because I think the unrated is the one where Gwen actually goes to meet him at the theater versus just writing him a letter. Which I think is the better version. I think the unrated, the one with more scenes, is actually better because you get a lot more time with some of the characters as far as their relationship stuff. So I felt like the Gwen and Lawrence story, I feel fits better and doesn't feel as cringy when you see the unrated, because you see them together more. There's more stuff going on. and the ones that are the one that's streaming is the theatrical, so it like it's just got so much stuff gutted from it that I think they should have just left in, because I mean every movie now is like 3 hours, like just leave it in. It's fine.
Agreed.
But yeah, so yeah, I love Wolfman 2010. That is my number one on my list, which makes a lot of people mad, but it is what it is. What do you have for your number 4?
My number 4 is gonna have to be Dog Soldiers.
Okay.
There is something about this film. I'm not exactly sure. I know it's like more of an indie film. But yeah, I love the look of the werewolves. I loved the, I mean, it sucks because you can tell that they had a rough time filming it, right? Being out in the woods and in the wilderness and trying to make it actually work. Right. So you had some costume, I think, and some, animatronics, if I'm not mistaken. So you can see that some of the angles and stuff that are shot are a little bit like dicey, like it, right? So it is a little bit low budget. It is, you do have to kind of take yourself out a little bit and be like, okay, I'm just watching a movie. Don't take it too seriously. Don't try to break it down too much, and just sit and enjoy this fun, fast-paced army guys fighting werewolves film.
Yeah. Dog Soldiers is my number 3. And I think the thing that I think the most about this is we talk a lot, especially like on Cursed Beings, and I think in general conversation, we're talking about werewolf movies. We talk a lot about like fast-paced, like werewolf movies where there's like a lot of wolf and there's a lot happening, versus some of these more like slower burn kind of werewolf films. And there's nothing wrong with those. I have a lot of appreciation for both sides of it. Anything werewolf, sign me up for. But this is an action werewolf movie. This is very action based. And I think that there's like those scenes when it's like an iconic scene. Like whenever people post about Dog Soldiers and they pick a gift to pose, it's always this one. But the scene when the 2 wolves come into the house and they're like, they get down to come in because they're so big. I think that's like one of the reasons I love this, is because even though like the wolves to me are very, I think very unique looking. I don't feel like they're what I would consider monster wolves because they're big and they don't look super humanoid, but they're very like, they just look very different. But when they are up close and you get to see the differences between the humans and the wolves, they're much more terrifying that way because they are a lot bigger up close, I feel like, than when you get the shots where they're coming in the windows and the scenes when they're on the tree line and like that kind of stuff. You don't really get to see just the differences in the size until they're like in that house and their head is like on the top of the thing and the humans are like really low. And I just think it's just such a great use of like camera angles and just the way they did it. It just makes them look so menacing. I love Dog Soldiers. It's one of my favorites.
I also think they did a really good job at making you feel a little claustrophobic in that house, but also the feeling like you're being closed in on by like this pack of wolves outside. And that I can appreciate it as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I feel the same way. I think that, I totally agree. That was, it was very, very, very well done. Small spaces, cramped areas of the house. And then you know that they're on the, like, especially because it does show them multiple times at the tree line. And when they start kind of advancing, you do feel very like, oh no. So yeah,
right. Yeah.
Totally agree with that. Yeah. What is your number 3? Your third one, right? Yeah. 3.
Number 3 is going to have to be Silver Bullet.
Well, that's good. We're getting all the overlaps first.
Yeah. I love me some Gary Busey and Corey Haim.
I cannot. It's iconic.
Gary Busey in the role of the crazy uncle. I mean, oh my gosh. It's perfect. Just right. I feel like I don't even remember him in any other film because he was so important in this movie to me personally. That it was just like, it kind of made his whole filmography disappear. And all I see him as is Uncle Red, the cool uncle that built the freaking
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Motorcycle, wheelchair with
And
the flames
it's
on it.
fun because like how many movies, and not just werewolf movies, but I think horror movies in general, where kids experience things or believe things are happening, and adults are just so quick to just not believe anything they say. And it's not that he just jumps in gung ho immediately on the werewolf train, right? But he's very quick to still be supportive of the fact that they think that this is happening. And so I think that it helps you care more about him as a character overall, because you feel like, oh, at least the kids are safe with him. Like you don't feel like you have to worry as much about like being dismissed and just being left alone to deal with it or whatever. Yeah, Silver Bullet's one of my favorites too. I've seen it probably 100 times, and it's funny because I do think it's camp. It's pretty campy in some parts, intentionally so. But like my favorite scene in this movie is, the scene when they go hunting for the werewolf and the bartender takes his bat and they're going to go
Yeah.
hunt this werewolf. And they're in the middle of that clearing where there's like a bunch of fog. And so there's the bartender or the bar owner or whatever and the werewolf are like fighting in the fog. And so he comes up with the bat, he comes down with the bat. And then the next time that you see the bat come up, the werewolf has it. He has the bat and he brings the bat up and he's like, every time I see that scene, I die laughing because it's such a intense moment to be so ridiculously silly, but it's really fun at the same time. But again, it's Silver Bullet's very camp. It's very 80s. And it's just such a good time. I love that movie.
No, I 100% agree. It's again, that's why it ended up in my top 5.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. I think one of the first things, was it the first thing? Maybe not the first thing, but one of the first couple things we did together was we reviewed Silver Bullet.
Is there any way I could do something real quick?
Yeah.
I just wanted to stop you before we got into the second one and did the computer that I'm working off of, it said that there's a battery thing, and before it shuts off on me, I wanted to make sure it plugged in.
Yeah. Do what you need to do.
Sorry about that.
No, you're okay. No worries.
What's weird is it looks like it's already. Yeah. Thank you. It was just barely pushed out.
Oh.
I was like, I usually would never have that type of thing go down. So.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. My bad. Okay.
No, you're okay.
Perfect. That was just like, oh no, we're gonna get into the meat of like the conversation that's gonna.
Yeah.
So I'd rather. Okay, cool. So whenever you're ready, jump back in, and I'm ready to go.
Okay, cool. But yeah, no, I love Silver Bullet. It's one of my favorites. It's just it's got some intense moments. I wouldn't say it's like over the top scary, but it's got some intense moments, but it's really just a fun movie. And I think that when you do werewolves, I think it's okay to do that sometimes. But I also I like the way the werewolf looks in this too. I think he's super cool. But yeah, and I love the whole like kid mystery solving detective side of it. And it's just really fun. It's just such a fun movie. I love Silver Bullet. So of course it was on both of our lists.
Oh yeah. For me, I think one of the creepiest parts of this film is the way the narration takes place, where it's his younger sister, older, of course.
Yeah, retelling the story.
Yeah, and it was just like her voice and the eerie music in the background. It's just like kind of like it almost like sticks into you, like, oh my gosh, like why is this so eerie sounding? Why is this kind of, like it adds such a it adds a whole nother level to it that's
no, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think I said this, but Silver Bullet was my number 2.
Oh,
so your bottom 3 were my top 3.
No,
which has got me super curious about your final 2. So
I mean, I'm glad that we have you know our same films in this category.
Yeah, so. I'm not super surprised. I would have been surprised even it being just a top 5 if we didn't have at least one. Just because, I mean, even though we do technically like different things in our werewolf movies, we also like a lot of the same stuff and are looking for the same stuff. So I'm not surprised that I figured we would have at least one. I figured the one would be Silver Bullet. And then when it was Dog Soldiers and Wolfman and Silver Bullet, I was like, damn, I didn't think we'd have three, but just, I mean, it's the strongest contenders for Werewolf Picks. I mean, it just is. So, I mean, of course there's going to be.
It's tough because there's not a lot of good werewolf films in the mix. When you start talking werewolf films, there's maybe 10 solid films.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like they're really bad.
Yeah. So, and I feel like there's a lot that are like super middle, where they're like not the worst you've ever seen, but they're just not enough to be on a top list or to be talked about more often, I guess. Like
you might be a lot nicer than me as well.
I am. No, I am. 100% I am. But that's like, to me, I can find a lot that are like mid-range for it. Fine. Like, meh, they're good. And there are a lot of really bad ones. I will give you that. But you're right. There's just not a lot that are just like so good that you just, I'm hoping that one that's coming out soon, the one we sent each other, I'm hoping that one is going to be good.
Well, again, I know we've touched on this topic in the past, but the fact that a majority of these films for me have come out in the 80s, and that's what nowadays is having to contend with, it kind of blows my mind that we don't have better, more, I don't know, just better werewolf films altogether, right? I would just expect us to keep climbing the ladder of quality. But
and instead the standard is still the 80s. I 100%. I don't remember. I know you sent me your list, but I don't remember what's your number 2?
All right, number 2. This is going to be a shocker for a lot of people because this is a lot of people's number 1 is American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
So
which isn't on my list at all.
That is surprising. I am surprised at that. But there is something about being able to blend a very comedic film with a very horrific style film and make it blend, in my opinion, so well. But not only that, you have the acting that's amazing. You have a story we've never seen before. And it takes you on an adventure because you're in I can't remember. It's Ireland or something, right? Or you're out in the moors and you're like on this like walk with 2 friends. And it's just it takes you. And so for me, it's just all over a good film. Not to mention one of the best transformations ever seen in a werewolf film. I mean, that's the thing everybody throws out first. And it's like, well, what about all the other stuff in the film too? It's just an amazing film.
Yeah. No, and I think if you were to make a separate list of transformations, I think this would make the top. It would be probably the number 1. But for me, it's also very much a drama. And it's not that I don't love this movie. I have a lot of love for it. One of my favorite scenes in any werewolf film is the subway scene where that guy's being stalked and you get these very brief glimpses of this wolf. And it's got one of the most heartbreaking endings. Like, it's so sad. Like, it's just not one that I revisit that often. And it's just, I don't know why. It's not because I have a lot of negative things to say. I mean, it's probably top 10. It's just not top 5. And it's like we talked about, we were talking in chat about the fact that, like, for me, I have a couple on my top 5 list that change. They're going to change. Like, if you ask me to do this list again in a year, who knows? Like, it could be like, I think the 3 that we've talked about so far would be, those would be there, but I think otherwise it can flip flop. But yeah, I love American Werewolf in London. I think it's the standard for transformations. I mean, if you're going to do practical, especially, it's like, that's what I'm looking for. And you mentioned this when we reviewed it. I think for your channel, where you were talking about like how well lit that is and how much they didn't shy away from showing it in that, you know, in it's all its splendor, right? It's just, yeah, it's just so well done. So yeah, and like you said, I mean, that's the thing everybody talks about, but it does have a lot of really good stuff too. It has characters that you care about. It kind of messes you up because you think the whole film, if you've never seen it, you going into it thinking the whole story is about these two best friends, but that's not what happens. And so yeah, no, it's a great movie. I love it. And I know it's on
It's almost a love story too, like mixed in for
it is.
sure.
It's a romance. Yeah, romance drama. Mm-hmm.
But then, God, if we're talking about the makeup effects, like his friend coming back and him,
Zombie.
right, slowly deteriorating. Oh man, there's so many points in this film that I feel like hold it in such high regard for me personally.
Yeah, and his fever dreams when he's in the hospital, like the Nazi wolves like blowing up his house and all that, or you know, setting his house on fire. That's just crazy. That's a crazy scene.
Yeah.
But yeah,
how did someone think that up?
It's wild. Yeah. So we did my top 3. So I'll tell you what my number 5 was. My number 5 is Howling Village, which I will give you as a stretch, I think, for a typical werewolf film. But I thought it was a ghost film. I went into it expecting ghost, and then I got something crazy different. And talking about lore, it's got a really just like kind of gut-wrenching story, and it's got characters that you're just like you care about. It's got some really good like scary moments and weird moments, and it's just one of those things where it was like I was unsettled and intrigued from start to finish. It's got a couple of little nods to like content creating stuff. It's got, you know, spooky kid. It's got a lot of stuff in it, and it's just checked a lot of boxes for me. I think the argument could probably be made that it's not a werewolf film, but I stand by my decision to put it on the list because that's what it feels like to me. And it's very weird, and it gets very dark and very just like messed up. And I just really loved it. It had so much lore, so much story. But it's just so good. And it was one that I'd followed for like, it took forever to get it in the States because it's a foreign film. It took forever to get it here. And then, so by the time we got it, it had already been out for like a year and a half or something like that. But it was worth it. I watched it like the moment it came out on VOD. I was like on it because I wanted to see it because it seemed so interesting. So yeah, so that was my number 5 because we already did my top 3. But that was my number 5 was Howling Village. And if you,
I haven't seen that one yet, so I'm like, I wish I could add to that.
No, I know you haven't. Yeah, because we're gonna cover. Yeah, just
you talking about it, I'm like excited to check it out for sure. Like
I really hope you at least sort of like it. I don't. Yeah. You may not love it as much as me because we do have different things that check boxes for us. But I just thought it was such a weird, unique take on something that we've seen a million times. And it's an Asian horror, which I feel like in general, they just knock that stuff out of the park most of the time. I don't think I've ever seen one that I just thought was dull and stupid. Never, not once. And so I went into it expecting to be scared and unsettled, and I was. And it had an emotional impact at a couple different points. It's just really good. So I'm hoping you like it. If you're curious to Albert's thoughts, we're going to cover it on Cursed Beings in our next episode. So he'll be watching it soon enough. But and randomly, like my partner who's not super into horror, like ended up like, I think I was watching it maybe, I don't know, maybe while she was playing video games or something. And then when she stopped, she like ended up watching the rest of it and really liked it. So I feel like, you know, we'll see what you think.
I'm looking forward to it for sure. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was okay, so tell me what your number 1 was then.
My number 1 is going to be The Howling. The Howling. There's something about it, like American Werewolf in London. You know, I said it combined like the comedy and the horror aspects together. I feel like The Howling is just strictly about horror and being creepy and being kind of just unsettling on multiple different levels, even beginning with her going and trying to find the serial killer and have like an interview with him in the worst of spots. It's by herself in the dark, right? It just starts off with like nightmare fuel from the get. And so for
Yeah.
me, that mixed with the fact that you get awesome werewolves from Rob Bottin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think
He
that's right.
was right. And then
Yeah, I think so.
also I liked the story. I liked how it
Yeah.
I think there's even a spot where they have a little bit of claymation, which is just so weird and random. And you'll notice it's not like a super crazy part, but it's enough to just be like why did they choose that option? So
Yeah.
that's my top pick.
Yeah. Great choice. Howling is great. I have only seen the first two. No. Yeah. There's a bunch of Howling movies. There's a
Those
bunch.
are probably the only ones you need to see.
Yeah, I think I've only seen the first two. I know for sure I've seen the first one. I'm fairly confident the other one I've seen is the second one. But I think you hit the nail right on the head when you mentioned that it's like strictly horror. Like it's so, because like I think werewolves and creature features in general, whether it's werewolves or aquatic monster, right? I think that those can go all kinds of directions. They can be super serious, they can be super scary, they can be very silly, they can be, I mean, it can go in all kinds of directions. But you're right, Howling hones in on the horror side of werewolves, and that's what I think makes it such a great movie. So Howling is in my top 10. It's a super, super good movie. And I think it's hard to talk about werewolves and not talk about the Howling on, obviously. Yeah. Like it's hard not to. So I know we're going backwards because we already did my top 3, but my number 4 is, because I know you're a big fan of this one too, is Rise of the Lycans, the Underworld prequel. That's got to be like the world's most successful prequel ever, because prequels do not do what this movie did. Like, and I love Rise of the Lycans. I loved the kind of going back a little bit and seeing the story of Lucian and what happened, because, you know, obviously in the original Underworld, we only see we know very, very little, very, very little. And we don't get to see, like, I loved that Ray's, the big giant guy, that he was like part of the initial thing. I love that too. And like, just getting to see like Victor and Sonya, which is, God, casting wise, they nailed, because she was supposed to look like Kate Beckinsale. And she does. Rhoda Mitra 100% looks like they could be siblings. But yeah, Rise of the Lycans is just so good. And I loved this kind of reverting back to like feral werewolves, because the ones that come for them are like on all fours, like, but they're still monsters, which, you know, I'm a fan of. And it's like a perfect movie. I love it so, so much. I loved getting to see all of those little bitty like pieces of lore that we got, and getting to see it all play out into this bigger picture and what happened. So good.
I really love the fact that they took CGI and practical effects in this film. It didn't just make it all CGI, because I feel like that could have killed it. But the fact that they decided to intertwine them both and kind of just had a good blend of all of it. It is an overall dark film.
Very gritty. It's color wise.
Right. I've always loved like movies that take place in like a castle or castle type of surroundings. And I feel like that's how this film is, right? It like takes place in a big, dark fortress area where
very gothic-y.
Right. It's just, there's a lot of things I really like about this film at all. Plus being able to see the love interest in the, go, and why it led to this whole feud between the werewolves for vampire thing. I liked how it went into the lore of that as well.
Yeah, it was really cool to see, especially because when you have a love story that is like a pivotal plot point, but you don't get any time with that plot point. It's, and don't get me wrong, I love the Underworld franchise in general. I think it's super strong, most of them. But I think that this one, like, being able to see that just kind of makes the other film stronger, in my opinion, because it's hard to just be like, oh, this is the Helen of Troy kind of situation, right? Where they're like, oh, there's this girl, she loved this guy, she wasn't supposed to, and now everybody hates each other. It's like, but being able to see them and how Lucian was with Victor initially before, things got to that point, and watching her be this just soldier kind of character. And I don't know, it was really, really, really good. And it's just one of my favorites. I love it so much. It's my favorite in the franchise. It's my number one ranking in the franchise. Cause I just think it's so strong. I loved it.
God, for me, it would probably be the first Underworld and then this one.
And then this one.
Both of those, I really liked both of them. I want to say the last one or two were kind of like, they're trying too hard with those.
Yeah, they lost me when they started freezing them, and I was out. I like the first three. I like Rise of the Lycans, Underworld, and Underworld Evolution. Those are the good ones. After that, it gets a little weird. And the removal of Scott Speedman, who plays Michael, was like dumb. That was a terrible decision overall. But I love those three. I think it makes a super strong trilogy. No complaints about any of them. I mean, I love the Bat Creature and getting to see William the White Werewolf in Evolution. Oh my God. So good. When he comes, this is not related to Ryan. Well, it is related, but when he comes out, when they open, when he goes and opens William's cage or whatever, the thing he was in, the coffin, and he comes lurching out, that is like one of the scariest werewolf moments ever. It's so cool. He looks so amazing. Cool. Oh my God. And you're just like, oh shit. This is for real. Yeah. We are, what's going to happen? How are we supposed to beat this thing? He's so cool. But anyway, Rise of the Lycans was my number 4. So mine was Howling Village, Rise of the Lycans, Dog Soldiers, Silver Bullet, Wolfman 2010 from 5 to 1. So I'm a little out of order, but I figured there's no point in me redoing them once I got to my number since we had the overlap. But well, cool. Well, that's our top werewolf picks. Go ahead and let us know in the comments how mad you are about the choice.
Right.
I know it's coming.
American Werewolf's the best. You know it.
Yeah, I got called I got called a soccer mom because I didn't have American Werewolf in London on my list, and I was like, that's not even that's not even an insult, man. Y'all got to do better.
That's a weird way to, I never heard that before.
I can't take your list serious, and I always respond because I got some time, I'm like, that's cool because it's my list. You don't have to take it serious. It's my list, not yours.
Well, that's funny.
And people get so mad because my list doesn't have American Werewolf in London. I feel like, what's the other one they get really mad about? Oh, Ginger Snaps was on my original top 5.
Oh.
And people apparently don't like that movie, which is weird. And so anyway, but I digress. But those are, so I know we'll get some some hate. I'll get some hate, probably in particular, because you at least had it on your list. But anyway, well, cool. Well, thanks for doing werewolf picks with me. Always fun to talk werewolves with you.
I appreciate you thinking about me for sure when doing this.
Yeah,
I do love me some werewolves.
Oh, I know. Same, me too. Well, cool. Well, thank you everybody for checking out this episode of Hearing Voices, the voices from the Mausoleum corner of the service channel. By this point, there have been some other top pick lists. Hopefully you'll go check those out as well. And hope you have a good rest of your day, and we will see you in the next one. You're so